Every day I go for a walk at this local park, and lately I've noticed so many ajashis and ajumas walking barefoot in the woods. For those of you that don't know, ajashi and ajuma are just Korean terms for middle-aged men and middle-aged women. There's also this thing called a barefoot park, which I'll show you at the end of this video. It's pretty interesting. And they're popping up not just in Seoul, but all over Korea. They're like getting insanely popular. It's not just old people walking barefoot though. I've been seeing more and more people wearing barefoot shoes here lately as well. I've been wearing barefoot shoes or minimalist shoes for 10 years now, and I've been wondering why there's this sudden rise in barefoot walking and barefoot shoe culture, not just in Korea, but all over the world. I got into the barefoot sphere because of foot issues that I was developing while working in metal shops, so I'm really wondering what's fueling the rise in popularity for other people. Like, why are they getting into barefoot shoes? At nearly $400 million, the barefoot shoe market is actually way bigger than I expected, and is projected to reach about $789 million by 2031. That means that pretty soon it'll almost be a $1 billion market. Big names are taking note of this too, with Adidas, Lowe, Prada, and other fashion brands beginning to release minimalist-inspired shoe designs. So what's fueling this growth though? Could it be Chris Hemsworth and his wife walking barefoot around town? Or maybe WeWork's founder Adam Neumann walking barefoot around New York City? Is it possible that going barefoot just makes sense? How could people walking barefoot be helping an industry that sells shoes? Your first thought in terms of barefoot shoes is probably the Vibram Five Fingers. You might think they're the ugliest shoes in the world. You might think that barefoot shoes are clown shoes. You also might think that they make no sense because we need to have arch support and thick soles for stability to protect us from injury.
Money's gotta be the shoes. Shoes.
It's weird though, because now you can find running shoes, dress shoes, and even military boots in barefoot styles. If people were getting more injured in them, why would the industry be growing? Could it be that there actually are some benefits to barefoot shoes? At this point, it's looking like that might be the case, especially with some surprising sports where going barefoot is preferred, if not required. I want to start off by talking about a lawsuit against Vibram for their five-finger shoes. In 2012, Vibram paid out $3.75 million for false advertising regarding the five-finger shoes. Their marketing claimed that the shoes had health benefits, but ultimately the court found that no scientific evidence could be provided to prove that Vibram Five Fingers, and we assume all barefoot shoes really, strengthen muscles in the feet and lower legs, improve range of motion in the ankles, feet, and toes, stimulate neural function important to balance and agility, eliminate heel lift to align the spine and improve posture, or that they allow the foot and body to move more naturally. Because Vibram couldn't substantiate these claims, they were ordered to pay people that were allegedly injured by their shoes. In reality though, transitioning to barefoot shoes can be risky, especially if we've been wearing traditional shoes for most of our lives. It's likely that the people injured by Vibram Five Fingers didn't know how to transition since barefoot shoes weren't really well known back then. We'll talk more about transitioning to barefoot shoes later in this video. Right now I want to focus on barefoot shoes today, in 2024. Who's using them? Surprisingly, weightlifters are using them, runners are using them, CrossFitters, hikers, and folks in the alternative health sphere are using them. But we shouldn't stop there. There are sports and activities that actually go barefoot. Fighters in the UFC or in Muay Thai, for example, go barefoot because it allows for better grip of the mat and more natural foot movement. Other martial arts like judo, jiu-jitsu, karate, and taekwondo are traditionally practiced barefoot. Although I have seen karate and taekwondo shoes being pushed at some schools in the United States. Similarly, some weightlifters and CrossFitters are choosing to go barefoot because it allows for stability and more natural movements during exercises. This is the craziest part to me. Barefoot shoes aside, so many people that I know prefer to lift in Chuck Taylors or Vans. Even traditional lifting shoes get rid of the foam that's in most traditional running and cross-training shoes and replace it with a rigid plastic one for stability. Some weightlifters even say that the Vibram Five Fingers are the best shoe for training because they allow your toes to move, which activates different muscle groups, particularly when using your calf muscles. Another high-intensity exercise that pushes the limits of the human body and doesn't involve footwear is gymnastics. Gymnasts run, jump, flip, land, and maneuver all while barefoot. This should tell us about the benefits of going barefoot from a practical standpoint. Aside from these, there's also yoga and Pilates, both of which rely on stability and balance and don't use shoes. Are you seeing a trend here? Stability, balance, natural motion. Lastly is running. Barefoot minimalist shoes are becoming more and more popular for running, with some estimating that 35% of trail running shoes on the market today are barefoot minimalist style running shoes. Runners find that the lack of cushioning and wide toe box allows for better balance and stability while running over uneven terrain. What's not surprising about runners leaning more towards barefoot style shoes these days is the fact that professional sprinters and track runners have essentially been using minimalist shoes for decades. Do you notice anything about these sprinters' shoes? They're essentially zero drop. There's no difference between the heel and the toe of the shoe. They are flat shoes. In fact, these types of shoes go by a couple different names. Spikes, because spikes can be screwed to the forefoot of some models, and racing flats, because they're flat. To me, the story gets even deeper though, and it's not surprising at all that barefoot shoes are becoming more popular. Most of human history has been spent barefoot. The first sandals ever discovered so far were these. Woven, zero-drop sandals from what is now Fort Rock, Oregon. They're over 10,200 years old. The oldest shoe found so far is this, a simple leather design called the Irene 1. To me, these look insanely similar to lace-up climbing shoes. Let's take a second to think about this for a minute. This means that the miners, stonecutters, transporters, and builders of the Great Pyramids and every other piece of megalithic stone architecture and most other architecture in general were either barefoot or close to it. If that doesn't blow your mind, I don't know what will. But let's think about all this and go back to the claims against Vibram. There was no scientific evidence to prove that five-finger shoes strengthen muscles in the feet and lower legs, improve range of motion in the ankles, feet, and toes, stimulate neural function important to balance and agility, eliminate heel lift to align the spine and improve posture, or that they allow the foot and body to move more naturally. And yet, the barefoot shoe market is projected to become an almost $1 billion industry in the next decade. There's got to be some truth here. Even if scientific studies haven't proven it yet, practical applications and the increased sales and use of barefoot-style shoes is saying a lot. Barefoot shoes are working for a lot of people. But what if there was scientific evidence to suggest that barefoot is better? This 2007 study examined the foot bones of 95 humans from modern and ancient times and found that the foot bones of pre-pastoral humans, that's the hunter-gatherer humans, who either were barefoot or had minimal straw or leather footwear, had fewer instances of injuries or deformation of the foot bones. Basically, the hunter-gatherers had stronger feet and walked barefoot. There are a handful of other studies looking into the pros and cons of barefoot shoes, but the problem is that these studies are often small and can't really inform us on long-term effects of going barefoot or wearing barefoot shoes. With that in mind, we should also bring up the 800-pound gorilla in the room and ask ourselves who would fund substantial studies to see if barefoot shoes are actually beneficial for human health. There's a much more simple example though, and that has to do with the physical deformities of the foot caused by tight toe boxes of traditional shoes and painful conditions like bunions that result from them. It makes sense that not wearing shoes or wearing shoes with a wide toe box would relieve the pain of bunions and help to reverse cramping of the toes. The question still, scientifically, is whether or not forcing the toes into a point has a negative effect. For some sports, you more or less need your toes forced together to be able to load your entire body weight on your big toe. But there's only two sports I can think of that require this: ballet and climbing. Otherwise, it really does appear that going barefoot or wearing barefoot-style shoes improves stability while walking or running. Your toes can literally grip surfaces, whereas in traditional hiking and trail running shoes, you rely entirely on the rubber outsole. There are other reasons that barefoot culture is becoming more popular though, and this is where a little woo-woo gets thrown into the mix.
It's that woo-woo!
Especially if you're a skeptic. Proponents of going barefoot promote two fundamental ideas by which going barefoot can potentially improve our health: acupressure and grounding. There are over 200,000 nerve endings on each human foot, compared to about 32,000 nerve endings on the palms of our hands and in our fingertips. One would argue that we have so many nerve endings in our feet because we're supposed to feel the ground beneath our feet. Evolutionarily speaking, this would help us do two really important things: avoid predators and allow us to sneak up more easily on prey while hunting. Putting on a shoe that's got an arch support and thick foam sole effectively numbs our senses. By walking barefoot or in thin-soled shoes, we have much more feedback in the soles of our feet and engage with our environment more fully. Feeling things like twigs, pebbles, or gravel under our feet can have a therapeutic effect and activate trigger points related to various bodily functions. This is according to Eastern medicine, though, which, despite its widespread practice in China, Korea, and Japan, and other countries, is still subject to scientific scrutiny. Which brings me to grounding. If you don't know about grounding, it's the idea that our modern shoes and construction methods keep us insulated from the ground, and so the electrical charge that would normally discharge into the ground stays in our bodies and potentially promotes inflammation and disease. By touching the ground with our skin, that charge is dissipated and our bodies maintain a more natural ancestral charge. Barefoot enthusiasts say that we should go barefoot to get the benefits of grounding, or buy sandals or shoes with copper inserts in the sole that help to dissipate the electrical charge in our bodies. Some studies show a difference between blood pressure or heart rate when subjects are not grounded versus grounded, but critics point out that these studies are often poorly controlled or don't contain enough participants. Again though, the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Who is going to fund studies that potentially tell us to ditch the shoes? Considering the evidence that we do have, which is basically hundreds of thousands, if not millions of anecdotes, and the increasing number of people purchasing barefoot shoes, and the fact that some very high-intensity sports either go barefoot or use barefoot shoes, I'd say there's something to this that needs to be investigated further. That being said, transitioning to barefoot shoes can be risky for some of us since we've been wearing shoes that lift our heels and pinch our toes together for our whole lives. The best thing to do is to take it slow. First, try wearing a zero-drop shoe with a little bit of cushion. Wear it a couple hours a day, then wear it maybe every other day, or until you become more comfortable in them. Since traditional shoes have elevated heels, they can make our calf muscles shorter, so it's extremely important to make sure to stretch these muscles regularly while transitioning. Once you're comfortable with those, you can try shoes with little to no cushion whatsoever. You'll probably find that you are no longer striking the ground as hard with your heel, and honestly, if more people wore minimal shoes, I bet your upstairs neighbor who stomps around the apartment all day wouldn't be doing that anymore. Seriously, try heel striking the pavement the way you would in a traditional shoe. It hurts. By no means should you go out and buy the thinnest shoe possible and then go and run a marathon or train extremely hard the day after. That's a good way to get injured. And now here's one of the barefoot parks popping up all around Korea. They've got different sized rocks cemented into the ground, and you walk around this and basically get an extremely intense, borderline painful foot massage. Oddly, I've found that doing this after I have lunch makes me digest my food a little bit better, especially if I have something questionable. And here's a little sign telling you the trigger points that correspond to different body parts. Do you think barefoot shoes are a trend? Have you tried them before? Have you seen any benefits from going barefoot or trying barefoot shoes? Do you think it's a load of bullshit? Let me know in the comments below. I'm eager to know your thoughts and to continue this conversation. Thank you so much for watching, especially all of you that reach out in the comments and via email. It means a whole lot. If you enjoyed this video or learned something new, please share it with a friend to help me with the algorithm. It's been pretty painful these days. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Take care.